If someone were to ask you, what's the most produced jet engine of all time, all of history? Well, it's actually here in our facility at the Learning Center at Evendale. It's the J47. More than 34,000 of these fighter engines were produced from the late 1940s into the 1950s, powering any number of aircraft during both the Cold War and the Korean War. The J47 is one of the great innovations in jet propulsion. It was a production of our Lynn plant. The design leader, Neil Burgess, and some of the smartest people in our jet engine business for many years were involved in this very, very important program. The J47 is an axial flow engine, and at its time was also very innovative because it had a heating system in the engine in which it was capturing heat from the compressor to warm up parts within the engine itself. This would help the aircraft to fly at higher altitude. It also had a very unique afterburner in the back. J47 would power the most important aircraft during the Korean War called the F-86. The Sabre was a great interceptor aircraft and had a kill rate of 12-1 against the MiG aircraft that were being flown by the North Koreans and the Chinese in the Korean conflict. This really helped to put GE on the aviation map with this J47 engine. And as time went on, it would power any number of different aircraft after the F-86 going into the early 1950s. It was actually produced both in Lynn and in Evendale, and at one time was also produced at some of the auto manufacturers in the early 1950s. The J47 engine would also lead to subsequent technologies that are introduced in the J79, and some of the smartest minds in our business in the late 40s and 1950s were involved in this fantastic technology. The J40 engine, of course, would then keep Cincinnati permanently on the aviation map because of its success and the volume of production in Evendale. This would become then a permanent part of GE Aviation and ultimately our headquarters, and a very, very important part of the industrial history of Cincinnati through this amazing engine. During the 1950s and 1960s, perhaps the most famous fighter jet engine of them all was GE's J79 engine. And this was an engine that featured one of the great technology advances developed by our own Gerhard Neumann, one of the most important leaders of our business. And it was the variable stator vane. And the idea of the variable stator vane in the compressor was to increase the stall margin of fighter engines and to allow them to fly faster. This innovation has been a part of jet propulsion ever since. The J79 engine, its origins are the J47, and then with the variable stator vanes and other innovations in this fantastic fighter jet, this program would grow dramatically and produce some of the best fighter jets during the 1950s and 1960s, most notably the F-4, but also the F-104. This Mach 2 fighter jet engine really made tremendous history with the F-104. And in the newspapers of the day, when you go back in the 1950s and 60s, it seemed like every other day you'd turn the page and there'd be a new speed record established by an aircraft powered by GE's J79, which was produced here in Cincinnati. And the J79, those technologies, in terms of metallurgy, in terms of unique power-to-weight ratios for this engine, would really set GE on a course with future fighter jet engines and also its commercial engines. Again, not as produced as much as the J47, but certainly a more durable engine than the J47. This J79, which really put GE again on the map during the 50s and 60s, is a very, very important part of not only GE's heritage, but also of our U.S. aviation military heritage.